Messages. We're elated to have you joining us once again. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex, and the show is titled Tex Messages, the Resurrection. So this morning I was reading on everydayhealth.com. It's a new resource article. Seems like they've kind of followed a little bit of the trendy nomenclature, 7 stages to this, 8 ways to do that, 10 ways till Sunday for the intelligence agencies to get back at people. So one of the articles though that happened to catch my attention there was about the ketogenic diet. Now the ketogenic diet is something that I began implementing last September, as in a year and 4 months ago. Today is January 10th, 2019, Thursday evening. So ultimately, for the last 16 months, I've been employing the ketogenic diet. But it's not entirely considered that, because the one that I use originally was considered the anabolic diet, which you would basically eat mostly fats and proteins for 5 days, Monday through Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday you would load up on carbohydrates. So I went ahead and I attempted that for a very long time. And what I basically found out is on the Saturday and Sunday, your brain would do some rather unique and abnormal things. You'd get more depressed, you'd get higher anxiety. Sometimes you just feel like you were straight inebriated on alcohol just from eating carbohydrates. And yeah, I'd measure blood sugar and everything like that. With this, they have this Rely-On system. You get these little needles and then these test strips, then a machine that measures the blood that you put on those needles. Then it measures your blood sugar. So I'd usually 2 hours after a meal measure it up and generally get around 140, 150, which was pre-diabetic level. So I figured, that the anabolic diet is probably a pretty good way to go. And even today I still utilize, it's mostly the anabolic diet, but it's closer to the ketogenic diet. And one of the reasons why is just so that Saturday and Sunday, it kind of gives you an opportunity to maybe eat a pineapple or eat some high carb food that you wouldn't normally eat during the week. One of the ways where you can test if you're in proper ketoacidosis, or not ketoacidosis, but ketosis, which basically means that your body is burning up blood, or it's burning up energy, and then it converts it to ketones, and then it gets in your blood, and then it eradicates it. That's one of the ways you can tell if your body is burning fat, by the ketone levels in your blood. So you get these little test strips. You urinate in a cup, dip the test strip on, measure it for a couple seconds, and then it changes colors. So pink, brownish, or usually if it was more pinkish, then it would be on the keto side. So there was a time when I did experiment with just eating virtually no carbohydrates for a few weeks, and urine was actually pink. So maybe that was a little bit on the extreme end of the ketogenic diet as far as the experimentation went. So I didn't quite feel it was necessary to go that deep. But it is a very, very helpful diet, and it's probably one that I'll hold for the rest of my existence. And I've been very careful about what I've eaten too. As a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, what I have here, I have a bit of a notebook here. See what this notebook essentially has. Yeah, it may look like chicken scratch, but for the last 5 years, this is basically everything that I've consumed. Almost to the nearest, probably 200 calories. So that's basically a very important and critical tool towards fighting poor health. And if you got indigestion or any digestive issues, it's absolutely imperative to know what's been consumed and your caloric, macro, micronutrient ratios and all this other fun stuff. So through that experimentation, I was able to take one thing. It definitely helps you take dieting more seriously. Well, you don't really call it diet. Well, yeah, I guess you kind of can, but see, and you start to see things in a more clearer perspective, because you think, a lot of people ask me, well, do you ever want cupcakes or pizza? And it's like, no, because the 5 minutes of pleasure will be significantly offset by the 5 hours of pain, or the 5 hours of discomfort, or just bad health that results from it. So it's just not really worth it. It's something you don't even consider. It's the input-output feedback. See, like this show, Tex Messages, the Resurrection. Yeah, we put a decent amount of work into it, and mean, we may or may not necessarily get a whole lot out of it, but we figure if there's at least 2 or more viewers, we're actually getting double what we're putting into it. So, as contrary to basically what I just said, what we put into text messages, what we get out is exponentially greater. So I mean, for me to stand in front of, maybe read a couple news articles and stand in front of a camera for half an hour, and then it provides entertainment for several hours of people, it's a net gain. Now does that mean, now there is also a critical mass point where you can oversaturate it and spend way too much time, and then the quality of the product deteriorates. That's when you have to start relying on other people to pick up the slack as well. Think of like a relay, whether you're in swimming or running or something like that. So if you were to have one person swim so most relays have 4 people. So if you were to have one person swim or run all 4 events, you're going to be significantly lagging behind the relays who have 4 different people swim or run 4 different events. And that's kind of the same with talk shows, ladies and gentlemen. Is you put in your best foot forward for 20 minutes, an hour, 4 hours. Some talk show hosts go up to 4 hours. No, I don't think I've ever seen any talk show host, mainstream or hobbyist, that goes above 4 hours. And with commercials and everything, it's probably more closer to 3 hours. They'll usually have guests on it and TV support, everything like that as well. So I mean, not to say that's an excuse for anything. I mean, they're certainly very talented people, and most of them are very passionate about what they do as well. And some of them are pretty good. I mean, that's how I got into talk show, just by listening to other people running talk shows and seeing how great they were. But getting back to the dieting thing, ladies and gentlemen. So this notebook here, it looks like it started back in 2013. So it's been going strong for about 5 years. As you can see here, the writing was started out very, very small, to the point where you couldn't even read it. I mean, I'm standing right next to it and I still can't read it, but from the angle of the camera and the distance of the camera is, it's probably complete chicken scratch. But if you think about it, I mean, this is really how much you're eating on a typical day. Well, I mean, just this little line section here is on a typical day. This is probably the course of, looks like about 3 months. So, it's really a lot more than you think. You're putting a lot more into your body than you realize. And there's also other factors that come into here as well. You know, feces samples and how frequent urination or overnight urination, or different types of color of the urination, types of fecal matter. All those things, I mean, yeah, it's a little gross to talk about, but they are very important to monitor them, because it helps to indicate your health. So you know that what you put in is good for you based on keeping track of what comes out. And of course other factors too. Like for example, if you strength train, if you're cardiovascularly training, you can monitor your performance based on what you've eaten. And then you know if you're doing the right thing or if you should change something up. Like for example, about probably 4 months ago, I was actually lifting not significantly, but I would probably venture to say about a little bit heavier weights than now. Say for example, now it might be 230 pound squat, but back then it was 250 pounds. Or a 175 pound bench press, then it was 185 or something like that. So I can kind of sort of trace back then and see that I was eating a lot more cans of tuna, and it was just a higher ratio of protein to fat. So that kind of leads me to believe that even though I've continually maintained a consistent routine as far as picking up and setting down weight, I'm actually less strong now than back 4 months ago, probably because of the eating macronutrient ratios. So probably in the next couple of weeks I'll try to offset that a little bit and maybe get some lean meat or anything in the diet, but it's a little difficult because satisfying sponsorships, you don't really have access to cooking your foods or preparing them for a long time, so you just kind of, canned tuna usually works, but eating 2 or 3 cans of tuna, you're overexposing yourself to mercury and possibly other toxins like that. So it's always a work in progress though. And I mean, the goal, the goal is to basically be able to eat as much as possible without impeding performance of daily activities. Like for example, if I'm satisfying sponsorships and I'm not doing an adequate job or a great job at work at satisfying whatever it is that they need done, then it's probably another indicator that there's something wrong with the food consumption as well. So there's a lot of factors that play into eating healthy, but it's absolutely the core and the foundation of just being a good person even. I mean, you don't necessarily need to rub it into everybody if you eat healthy. And, you know, that's one of the issues that I occasionally face sometimes because, you know, vegan or vegetarians, they sort of give dieters a bad reputation because they do act a little arrogant about their diet and say, well, people shouldn't be doing this because of this moral principle. And I mean, yeah, I guess it sort of makes sense, but I mean, ultimately, 100% the reason for any food I consume is strictly based on health. It has nothing to do with social stature or moral principles or nothing like that. Not saying I'm just going to go hack up some random animals and eat them. Not necessarily. I mean, there are basic principles to follow as far as just being a kind person. Like, for example, advocating for chickens to be in horribly raised environments and buying meat from questionable producers. That is definitely, I mean, that's just a common sense thing. You know, you would much rather buy chickens that are raised on a pasture or eggs that are passed from pasture-raised chickens. You know, it's not so much because the chickens are morally or have less depressive characteristics or because they're happier, it's just because they're healthier. Happier animals are going to be healthier. Ultimately, their meat and blood are going to, and their heart and organs and eggs are going to be healthier too. Because if they're under stress, they're going to have all the hormones coursing through their body, and it gets into their meat. And then when you eat the meat, it gets into your body. Now, yeah, the same steroid or the same stress hormones that a cow has, maybe it won't fit on the receptors of a human, but it'll still dilute the blood, and possibly, as far as we know, maybe some of them do. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen. But other kind of diets, ketogenic, low fat, all this other gluten-free, all this other goofy stuff. It takes several months to figure out if a certain diet is working. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, I did the gluten-free for a week, or I did the fresh food, raw food only for a week and felt great, but it was too expensive or too this or too that or the other thing. And you kind of, sometimes you have to dismiss your preconceived notions because, see, somebody of my stature, I'm only about 150 pounds, so you would read the daily caloric intake and it says 2,000 calories. So you'd think, well, all right, you know, if I eat 4,000, that'd be awfully ridiculous and probably not a smart thing to do. But based on the amount of weights I pick up and set down and just being active outside of these walls, and hell, even maybe doing this show burns pretty good amount of calories. So I mean, it seems that 3,500 to 4,000 calories is what I need to maintain a 150-pound body weight. Now, it's, we all have different metabolic systems and immune systems, whatever the case may be. So some of us may have more infectious diseases that we need to fight off, so you need more calories for that. So yeah, I mean, it's just trial and error over a very long period of time and getting into a good habit. And it doesn't take a long time to write down all this garbage either. I mean, if I go traveling or go to somebody else's house for a while, a couple days, just bring a little piece of paper with and on a pencil, write down everything I eat while I'm there. Keep it in my pocket or something. It's very, very simple to do. And it's very easy to memorize. You know, if you write stuff down, if you lose that piece of paper, but if you wrote it down, then you have a better memory of it or recollection. So, everydayhealth.com, one of their articles is talking about ketogenic, the ketogenic diet. And there's 7 myths about the keto diet. Now, a lot of people probably heard about the extolling the virtues of it. You get a sharper memory, less brain fog, weight loss, blood sugar consistency, and more energy. I can pretty much absolutely say all those things are true, from other than weight loss, but that's obviously not something I'd be looking for. But otherwise, all those things are probably absolutely 100% true. And maybe I did eat more carbohydrates and I just started turning into a land whale. So I mean, the weight loss could possibly be a fact of life. Myth 1: your body goes into ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis is what happens to diabetics. It's a very bad condition to have, and their bodies this blood insulin is getting out of control, and then they're burning up. It's burning up fat or proteins on your organs, and then the ketones get into your blood, which is the same ketones that are in ketosis, but in this case your body is just burning fat as energy. So that's why diabetics measure their urine to see on those ketoacidosis strips to see if they're in ketoacidosis, then they know that they got an ass full of trouble. But ketosis, see, there's ketosis, which is what the ketogenic diet wants you to get into, because then your body is burning fat more efficiently than carbohydrates, like glucose, that the body is naturally inclined to burn. You know, it just burns quicker. It's a smaller chemical bond or a small chemical structure. Myth number 2. Go on and off keto diet is a way to keep weight low. And one of the things with ketogenic diet is it takes a few days to finally get into it, to get your body to start burning the ketones. And if you start eating carbohydrates, see, the whole idea of the anabolic diet was that you would get into the ketogenic state, and then you would load up on carbohydrates, and then get right back in the ketogenic state right away. So you would have all these glycogen energy storages when you would pick up and set down weights, or run around town, or bike around, or swim around an ocean. So, 5 days just eating high fat and protein, it would put you in the ketogenic state, and then you would eat the 2 days of carbohydrates, maybe 36 hours worth, just long enough to maintain the ketogenic state, and then you go back to the 5 days of high fat, high protein. So with that, you're able to stay in the ketogenic state all the time, and then get the extra carbohydrate, or to get the extra glycogen from the carbohydrates. That was the whole idea behind it. But for just sticking with the ketogenic diet, it's just best to, if you want to be very efficient at burning the fat, to stick with it. And it's a little tricky too, especially for if you're allergic to dairy or chocolate or eggs or peanuts or anything like that. But I mean, there's plenty of food out there, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, you will find at some point that, at first, eating 2 or 3 cans of tuna may seem repulsive, but over time you sort of get used to certain foods, and then you start to enjoy them. Pecans, for example, is something that I basically have as much pleasure eating pecans today as I would have had eating Skittles 15 years ago. It's just, when you train your taste buds, they accept less flavor, basically, but less flavor means healthy, then it's great. Myth 3, everybody has some carb needs. So occasionally issues with fat for energy and physical activity may allow over 50 grams of carb per day, because what happens is the ketogenic diet wants you to be between 20 and 50 grams of carbohydrates per day. But if you're doing a whole bunch of exercise and working out and everything and thinking hard and living life in the fast lane, you may need more than 50 grams of carbohydrates per day. That's why it's a good idea to have those keto test strips, so then you know if your body is burning ketones or not. So if you're eating 75 grams of carbohydrates per day, but you're still, according to your keto test strips, in ketogenic state, then you're probably good. And everyone's a little different, of course, based on activity, genetics, and everything. Now, one of the things about it is the myth 4, that you're allowed to eat lots of bacon and sausage and high saturated fats. There are plenty of healthy sources of fats. Tree nuts is definitely one of them. Certain kinds of oil, olive oil, avocado oil, and then some of the other meats, or some of the other butters, like some of the other fats like butter and dairy. Those are a little bit higher in saturated fats. And then you get your red meat, which has a decent amount of saturated fats in it as well. But most of my fat comes from olive oil and tree nuts, and there's a lot of variation of tree nuts too. You got your pecans, macadamia, cashew, walnuts, pistachios. There's a few other too. Your regular peanuts, and then hazelnuts, and Brazil nuts. So there's plenty of variety there. Almonds too is another great one. And it's a good idea to get organic of all these aforementioned products. So myth 5, you can't eat veggies and fats because of the carbohydrates. One of the problems with the ketogenic diet a lot of people have is constipation, and to eradicate that, it helps to eat plenty of fiber, which is found in vegetables and fruit. So that's why it's highly recommended to, most of your carbohydrates is to come from fruit or vegetables. Now fruit, you don't really need to eat a whole lot of that. Vegetables, carrots, peas, celery, broccoli, eggplants, avocados. Well, avocado might be a fruit, but they all have a good amount of dietary fiber in them. I mean, yeah, if you look at a label or a nutrition fact sheet, it'll say lots of carbohydrates, but when they got a lot of fiber too, it sort of offsets any of the bad effects of overindulging on the carbohydrates. Plus, the dietary fiber feeds your probiotics, which is absolutely necessary to good digestive health. Now, myth number 6, high in protein. Generally, the ketogenic diet is probably about a 3-to-1 fat to protein, depending on your activity levels. If you do a lot, because excess protein can convert into glucose, so your body may not go in a ketogenic state if you're eating way too many proteins, because your body will just see it as carbohydrates, then it'll start to catabolize your muscles. That's why you want to be efficient at burning the fat, because then all the protein you take will just be used to build muscles. But again, if you're lifting heavy weights and all that stuff, then you probably need a good amount of protein. But if you're just running around or swimming or anything, you probably don't need as much. Myth 7, the ketogenic diet is the best way to lose weight. Now, it probably is as far as diets go, but good exercise, being a productive person, being a having high moral and social aptitudes, those things can all contribute to losing weight and everything like that too. That's very difficult for me to speak to losing weight, so I'm not going to try to pretend like I know what I'm talking about on that field. Because quite frankly, I just don't have the bodily structure, the digestive system to support being overweight, so it's something that'll probably never, even if people who are overweight, who consider themselves overweight, probably actually have a significantly healthier digestive system than I do, and probably a significantly healthier skeletal structure as well, and other factors as well. I mean, they have a higher potential for good health than somebody like me who, if I tried very, very hard to gain weight, probably have like a heart attack or some type of kidney failure before I could even get to a point of considering myself obese. So, I mean, people who consider themselves overweight or obese, whatever, according to the BMI, they have pretty good potential for being healthy. I mean, yeah, it's not easy to be skinny and anything too, but sometimes you can't really hold yourself to the standards of people who are skinny because they just have a smaller skeletal structure. You know, maybe they have cancer, so they're under chemotherapy and lose a bunch of weight in that regard. So I mean, there's really no accurate cure-all reason for why some people are skinny and some are big. There's just genetic variations. It's the spice of life. It's what makes it great, what makes living great, the variety and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, the ketogenic diet, it's definitely been a fad lately. It seems like a pretty good fad. You know, like I said, I've been on it for about 16 months now, and I haven't looked back. It's great. Well, it's more of the anabolic diet. Some bodybuilder guy wrote about that. So yeah, the anabolic diet, it's great. Ketogenic diet's probably great too. Definitely would recommend it to everybody. And then just make sure to pay attention to what you eat and everything like that too. And you're probably going to have to make a lot of trips to the grocery stores and prepare your meals and everything. But I mean, even if you go out to a restaurant, there's always things available like a chicken breast or some kind of meat, or they don't really sell too many tree nuts. But I think the biggest problem people make on a ketogenic diet is when people try to do these quote-unquote healthy diets, they'll just totally under-consume calories. They might only eat 500 calories a day because they think that salad is the only healthy thing, and then they're only intaking 500 calories per day. So that's about the worst thing you can do. I mean, I consider that I have a fairly healthy. If most people ate exactly what I did, they'd probably look significantly healthier than me and be far more advanced than I am at whatever it is that I do. Most people. So, I mean, it seems like it'd be what I consider a healthy diet, and it's close to 4,000 calories on some days. It's probably close to 3,500 realistically. And for somebody of 150-pound body weight, that seems to be a significant amount. But, people at 200, 250 pounds, that's their natural body weight, they might need closer to 4,500 calories or 5,000 calories, whatever the case may be. I mean, the brain burns a lot of energy too. So, I mean, if you're just sitting around and thinking and doing cognitive skilled activities, then your brain will burn some too. But the brain is also using a lot of energy when you're controlling your parts of your body. That's the motor neuron pathways that the brain controls and fires all those signals, which is another energy expenditure. Well, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to have you joining us once again on this Thursday evening, January 10, 2019. We hope you can join us in the future as well, and we'll likely be back tomorrow night. Thank you very much for watching. I truly appreciate it.